Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Ashened Yugioh deck profile. With the release of the Infinite Forbidden, we didn't get any new Ashen support, with the Mimighouls taking the TCG exclusive spot, so we might not see some new support for a little while for the Ashen deck. So I figured I'd give my update to the deck with the support we received from the Legacy of Destruction booster set. Missed updating it during that set, but figured I'd also wait until Infinite Forbidden came out to see if we would be getting any more support instead of updating it, before the set came out, because you never know when they like to update the decks with support. But two, runs of support seems to be the trend we've been seeing with the TCG exclusive decks up until now. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and we'll start off with the main deck monsters. For the Ashened monsters, we're running 3 copies of Vidos, the Eruption Dragon of Extinction. During the main phase, with this card's in your hand, quick effect, you can target one card in the field zone, special summon this card to your opponent's field. If you do destroy that card, then you can add to your hand or set one Ashened continuous trap from your deck. If this card is sent from your opponent's field to the graveyard, you can destroy all monsters in the field. You can only use each effect of Vidos, the Dragon of Extinction, once per turn. So the setup with this deck is very similar to a Dark Souls type of playstyle, setting up a boss dragon on your opponent's side of the field for your own monsters to defeat. So setting up that, also having a field spell destruction play to do so, being able to target a card in the field zone, special summon this card to your opponent's field and destroy that card, gives you options depending on the field spell, if it's your own field spell or one of your opponents to use for your Vidos the Eruption Dragon. We're also running 3 copies of Priestess of the Ashen City. If Obsidian, the Ashen City, is in your field zone, you can special summon this card from your hand. That is the field spell choice that we run in the deck also. And then you can only special summon Priestess once per turn. This way, if this card's normal or special summon, you can add one Ashen card from your deck to your hand, except for Priestess. You can only use this effect of Priestess once per turn. Grabbing more of our different Ashened monsters is a big help as well for the setup of special summoning out all of the different Ashen monsters to our side of the field once we set up Vidos on our opponent's side of the field as well, and then being able to have that setup for our Ashen traps to use against it also. For the other monsters, we're running 2 copies of King of the Ashen City, having the same special summon option if Obsidian, the Ashen City's in the field zone. And you can only special summon King once per turn this way. During your main phase, you can special summon one Ashen monster from your hand, except for the King of the Ashen City, or if your opponent controls a monster with 2,800 or more attack, you can special summon it from your deck instead. More and more setup by just having your Dragon of Extinction on your opponent's side of the field, thanks to this monster as well, being a great search target as well, off of your Priestess, because then you can use Priestess to add King, and then King can special summon from the deck if the rest of the cards are set up as well, with those one-ofs being 1 Shaman, 1 Hero, and 1 Spearhead of the Ashen City. All one-ofs just because of their restrictions. They do have the special summon from the hand if you have the Ashen City in your field zone from hand, and then also being able to take a Pyro monster with Hero of the Ashen City, and with this card, destroy it. Then if you destroyed Vidos, the Eruption Dragon of Distinction, you can place one Obsidian from your deck face up in your field zone, with Shaman of the Ashen City being able to have more of a recycled play, and with Spearhead being able to have more of a tribute option to target a card your opponent controls and bounce it back to their hand. With the rest of our main deck monsters being 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, and 1 copy of Nibiru, and 1 copy of Ghost Ogre. These are because I do run the cross-out designators just as extra targets to go with these cards. If you do want to run the Ghost Ogre in the spot, you can always put in Effect Veiler or Drone Lockbird for that one-of hand trap lineup there. And for the spells, 3 copies of Awakening of Vidos. Place 1 Obsidian, the Ashen City, from your deck face up in either field zone. Then if your opponent controls a card in their field zone, you can add 1 level 5 or higher Dark Pyro monster from your deck to your hand. For the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon from the deck or extra deck, except for Pyro monsters. So this is to give you access to the Vidos to destroy a card if you give it to your opponent's field zone. You can then have the access to the dragon as well. Search power, but if you already have the dragon, you can always activate it in your own playstyle. But speaking of the field spell, we're running 3 copies of Obsidian, the Ashened City. Face up special summon monsters your opponent controls, become Pyro during your turn only. You can only use each of the following effects of Obsidian, the Ashen City, once per turn. During your end phase, you can target 1 Obsidian, the Ashen City, in your graveyard, place it on the bottom of the deck, then draw 1 card, so you can at least recycle the field spells to always have access, since you'll be destroying them as well, thanks to your Vidos Dragon. 3 copies of Extinguished the Ashen. You send 1 Dark Pyro monster from your deck to the graveyard, then you can add 1 level 5 or higher Pyro monster from your graveyard to your hand. For the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you can not special summon from the extra deck except for Pyro monsters. And you can banish this card from your graveyard to fusion summon one Pyro fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as material, giving you the fusion option in the deck. So we can go into our bigger evolved Vydos, the Dragon of Endless Darkness, needing one Vydos, the Eruption Dragon of Extinction, and 2 or more level 9 or lower Pyro monsters, making your opponent's monsters Pyro as well. Gives us access to some super polymerization plays as well with the monsters they may have on their side of the field. And also 2 copies of Rekindling of the Ashen. Place one of your Ashen cards that is banished during your graveyard on the bottom of the deck, except for Rekindling of the Ashen, to target one effect monster your opponent controls and negate its effects until the end of this turn. So more of a quick play imperm in the form of a spell, while also being able to recycle our own Ashen cards. For more of the generic spells we run on the deck, 3 copies of Super Polymerization. This is what I mentioned before. Turning your opponent's monsters into Pyro monsters gives us more targets, along with the Vydos we potentially could place on their side of the field for our fusion play. The 3 copies of Crossout Designator. We have the Ash Blossom, the Nibiru, the Ghost Ogre, and the Infinite Impermanence lineup for plenty of targets to use with this card to stop any of our opponent's cards from stopping any of our own plays as well. And then lastly, the 1 copy of Terraforming and the 1 copy of Call by the Grave for the rest of the spells. Our only traps that we run, aside from the Infinite Impermanence, are the 1 copy of Ashen to the Endlessness and Ashen for Eternity. One of them's because they are searchable with the setup we can do with our Vydos, the Eruption Dragon of Extinction, on the field. So we only need the 1 of copies for the fusion play of Ashen to the Endlessness and Ashen for Eternity, being able to add Vydos off of its search or an Ashen monster from your graveyard to your hand for more add back power off this card also, with the last of the traps being the 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. As I said, another Crossout Designator target with this card, but also just good to have as added backup if our opponent does go first against us. For the extra deck, we're running 2 copies of the fusion monster, Vydos, the Dragon of Endless Darkness, needing 1 Vydos, the Eruption Dragon, and 2 or more level 9 or lower Pyro monsters. It cannot be destroyed by card effects. Also, your opponent cannot target it with monster effects. If this card's fusion summoned, you can destroy all spell and traps your opponent controls. When your opponent activates a card or effect on the field, quick effect, you can send one face-up Ashen card you control the graveyard to destroy that card. You can only use each effect of Vydos, the Endless Darkness Dragon, once per turn. But once again, taking your opponent's resources to make this card, destroying your opponent's own cards, and then having more of an answer for your own monsters as well. For that setup of destroying your opponent's cards really makes for a true boss monster dragon for you to utilize. We're also running 2 copies of Embers of the Ashened, needing 2 Pyro monsters. This is the one I normally go for with the fusion setup of Extinguished of the Ashen, needing 2 Pyro monsters. If it's fusion summon, you can target a field spell in your graveyard, add it to your hand. At the start damage step, if this card battles an opponent's Pyro monster, you can destroy that opponent's monster. And if it is your turn, this card can make a second attack in a row. More of a way to take down Vydos, the Dragon of Destruction, while having a second attack thanks to Embers of the Ashen on top of that. Also the 1 copy of Garuda for another option for the Super Polymerization. And then for the Xyz monsters, since we do run a good number of level 4 monsters, 2 copies of Infernal Flame Banshee, since we can be locked into Pyro at times for this card, just as more of a search option for our different Pyro monsters we run in the deck. The 1 copy of Abyss Dweller, along with 1 Baguska, and the 1 Zeus for the rest of the Xyz monsters. And for the Link monsters, 1 copy of Barricade Board Blocker, 1 Nightmare Cerberus, 1 Moon of the Closed Heaven, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, and the 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. Very useful, since we can give our opponent those monsters also for resources to use as our own. But as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, as I said before, you can activate cards like Awakening of Vydos, placing the Obsidian from your deck face up in either field zone. If your opponent controls a card in their field zone, you can activate 1. You can add 1 level 5 or higher Dark Pyro monster. So then you have the Obsidian Ashen City, the special summon of your own Vydos to your opponent's field, and then add or set 1 Ashen Continuous Trap. But then if you have the field spells set up in your own, let's say you already have the Vydos to go for the special summon, you can then have your Priestess set up, and then Priestess can grab your King of the Ashened, which then you can use if you have the field spell to special summon 1 additional monster, giving you the sense of the monsters going off to defeat the dragon that you set up on your opponent's field. If you have the Super Polarization play, that can take the dragon as that resource along with your own monsters to special summon out the bigger dragon on your field, along with the extra destruction plays that this card can provide against your opponent, and also just using your resources, because once again, you can make your opponent's monsters become Pyro depending on the cards you have set up on your field also. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. As I said, we sadly didn't get more support, but it feels like a lot of people are enjoying the Mimighoul support that we got as the new TCG exclusive deck from the Infinite Forbidden set, but I'm sure we haven't seen the last of the Ashen deck. We always seem to get the TCG exclusive support later on in the OCG in main booster sets, so that's always something we have to look forward to. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.